Hello and welcome to the Farming Today podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In this episode, will the record-breaking heat hit farmers' irrigation plans this summer?
Although some people will undoubtedly go short, I think most people will be okay unless the dry weather conditions persist.
More on that later. Let's start, though, with our topic for this week, local food systems. It isn't always easy to connect people on a limited budget with fresh, healthy produce, but a farming family from Staffordshire have made that their mission. The Mercers rear pigs and chickens at Packington Free Range in the east of the county. They've set up Farm Fresh Revolution, a project which delivers discounted fruit, vegetables and meat to local schools in order to inspire families to eat more healthily, as Bob Huckenhole reports.
A market stall atmosphere at the end of a school week. Volunteers from the charity Farm Fresh Revolution have arrived at Co-op Academy Clarice Cliff Primary in Stoke-on-Trent with bundles of fresh produce to sell cheaply. One of them is Michael Skinner.
I could be very high and mighty and talk about the public service and all the rest of it, but actually it's a heck of a lot of fun. That's the first thing. We all have a bit of a laugh at the farm packing the vans, and then we try and make it as jolly as we can for the families. And then obviously underneath it we're providing a valuable service for the families and helping to encourage them to eat more healthily than they might otherwise do.
7 schools in poorer areas of Staffordshire are currently benefiting from the project, which started deliveries in 2017. Sally Mercer is a founder of the charity.
We started by trying to get surplus vegetables and fruit to use at things that aren't being used by the local supermarkets. But actually, it was a real hit and miss with quality and supply. The next step was going to the local wholesale market in Birmingham. We've got a huge wholesale market there, and we didn't want anyone to feel like they were getting something that was nearly out of date.
I think you supply the food for £3 and it's worth about £17. So how do you afford it?
One of our missions is to try and get children particularly eating vegetables and fruit that they've not had before and wouldn't normally have in their diet. And one of the barriers to that is that some parents, when they've got a limited budget, don't want to go and buy food that they don't know if their children's going to eat because it will just go in the bin. We're not giving it away. It is people buying their food, so they've got some pride and excitement.
So Robbie, what do you think of the food that you've been getting from Farm Fresh?
Nice quality, it's been checked every bit and it's fresh.
And what's the tastiest?
I think the courgette.
What is it you like about them?
They kind of bring a little bit of flavour and a lot of flavour sometimes, and the meals you can make with them.
As a parent, it's opened up my options of what ingredients to use. I think it's really good. When you collect your bags, you get a leaflet to give you ideas to inspire you at home. I've got a big family, so it gives me lots of ideas there. And it's also changed our eating habits at home as well.
So, is Farm Fresh Revolution an idea that could spread around the country? Sally Mercer again.
I think it is very possible to do it by people who haven't got an operation such as ours, but to do it on a smaller basis. It's entirely feasible that one farmer or just someone in the community could reach out to their farmer, go and get some produce, go and tie up with their wholesale market and take a delivery along to a school. It's very possible to do this, but it just may come in different ways in different computations.
Sally Mercer. Well, food prices only seem to be going one way at the moment. Predictions from various industry bodies suggest an increase of 9 or 10% by the end of the year. This week's food programme asks if anything can be done. As we've been reporting, the cost of energy, diesel, fertiliser and other farming inputs have all been on the rise, with more inflation expected to come. I had a chat with the programme's presenter, Dan Saladino, who pointed out the impact of logistics.
One story that hasn't really received the attention it deserves is how the Gulf states have become so influential in the food system. And the production of fertiliser and its transportation along the Strait of Hormuz is now well known. Less well covered is the region's status as a logistics hub. For example, the United Arab Emirates, and in particular Dubai and Jebel Ali Port, has become a major transshipment hub for food and commodities. 60% of China's exports to Europe and Africa now pass through Dubai. And so if trade around ports such as Jebel Ali is disrupted, as well as the impact on fertiliser that we've been hearing about, we'll see huge ramifications for the direct supply of food commodities, including humanitarian aid. So it's an extra reason why the ongoing negotiations between the USA and Iran are so important for food, farming and inflation.
You're also looking at how concentrated the control over farming inputs, that's things like fertiliser and fuel, has become. What impact is that having on food prices?
Yeah, in the programme, we hear from Jennifer Clapp. She's research chair in global food security and sustainability at the University of Waterloo in Canada, and she's also a scientific advisor to the UN on food systems. She spent the last 5 years researching the corporate control of 4 major farming inputs: machinery, seeds, pesticides, and fertilisers. A relatively small number of businesses play a major role in these inputs. And when she looked at fertiliser, for example, and what happened at the start of the war in Ukraine, she found there was a discrepancy in the extra costs being caused by the war and what farmers ended up paying.
At that time, we saw grain markets go crazy because Russia and Ukraine collectively supply a huge proportion of the global export market, but also fertilizers coming from Russia and Belarus were disrupted. Indeed, supply chain disruptions were leading to higher prices, but prices went up so sharply and so quickly, and also beyond what you would think would normally happen. And it turns out that the corporations were even, some of them, bragging to their own shareholders in their annual reports that they were able to increase prices that they were charging to farmers beyond their own price increases. And if you look carefully at the profit data, you see that not only were the overall net profits of the firms rising quite sharply through that period, but their marginal rate of profit was also rising. So they were able to increase the rate and increase their overall profits by a huge amount. And this led to widespread concern among farmers that they were basically being way overcharged for their fertilizer. And they were actively complaining about this. And this did reach the level, especially in the U.S., we saw that under the Biden administration, there was an effort to look closely at these complaints by farmers so that they were able to get that on the radar.
And this is a pattern you don't see across the entire industry. And it hasn't yet happened, Professor Clapp says, because it's too early in the context of the current war in Iran. But it's something to look out for.
What about solutions? Does Professor Clapp have anything to say on how you can improve things for farmers in the future?
Yeah, Professor Clapp is also a member of EPES Food, the International Panel of Experts on Sustainable Food Systems. They've just published a report called The New Geopolitics of Food. This is arguing that we are coming towards the end of the food system as we've known it for the last 50, 60 years and entering a new style food regime. And they point to President Trump's tariffs, the decline in international cooperation, climate change and conflict driving this change. This new food systems regime, EPAS Food argue, there could be new opportunities for cooperation and collaboration between smaller states. For example, how states and regions can work together by investing in and developing more agroecological ways of farming, and also on trade. And Professor Clapp's argument is that with more state support, it's possible to find ways in which the effects of volatility and shocks to the system can be lessened for farmers in more parts of the world.
There's benefit in these states cooperating with each other, sharing information about how to grow food ecologically rather than just relying on big tech, big data, big digital agriculture and that sort of thing. That's going to lead to more fossil-intensive agriculture, and we need to move away from that.
Professor Jennifer Clapp there. Just before you go, Dan, we are both judges in the Food and Farming Awards again this year. In my case, it's the Farming for the Future category. For you, it's innovation. What are you looking for?
Like you, Charlotte, I love judging because we receive incredible stories that we then go and visit. It's incredibly wide-ranging, diverse in its nature. What we really want are the ideas that people are coming up with that in the long term can make a big impact on the food system that we've been talking about in this conversation.
And to nominate for that, or indeed for the Farming Today and Archer's Farming for the Future category, where we're looking for people or organisations making farming more resilient and sustainable, just go to bbc.co.uk/food awards, where you can find all the categories and the terms and conditions and privacy notice. Entries close at midday on the 15th of June, and fellow judge Mally Harris, who plays Natasha in The Archers, and I look forward to hearing from you. Now, water is a main topic of conversation amongst farmers at the moment because it's in short supply. Memories of the wet winter have been dried out by the recent record-breakingly hot weather, and those growing crops or indeed relying on grass to feed their animals are all talking about rain, which hasn't turned up yet. Environment Agency figures show that rainfall across England last month was 38% of the long-term average. South Essex got 2 millimetres. That's just 5% of the average. Well, the good news is that rain is forecast. But for those who irrigate their crops over the summer with water taken out of rivers or aquifers, it's called abstraction. What are the prospects? Steve Moncaster is a water management specialist with Norfolk Environment, Food and Farming.
Farmers, particularly in the east of England, but also in the Midlands, grow a large volume of irrigated crops, so potatoes, salads, other crops that require water during the summer. That water is pumped out of the ground from aquifers or from rivers or from reservoirs, and all water which is abstracted in that way is licensed by the Environment Agency.
Is it likely, do you think, that this year, because we haven't had that much rain recently, farmers will be limited on what they're allowed to take?
I think some will if the dry weather persists, but there was quite a lot of rainfall over the winter period that's just passed, topping up the natural systems on which we rely more or less back to normal. And although some people will undoubtedly go short, I think most people will be okay unless the dry weather conditions persist.
What does a farmer do then when they've been thinking, well, I'll be taking this amount of water in abstraction, and suddenly that is reduced? At that point, what are your options?
For some, it means the end of their business in terms of irrigated agriculture, and they have to go and find something else to do. Other people adapt their businesses by building winter storage reservoirs, so taking water from rivers in the winter when it's available. Other people move from where there isn't water to where there is, so there's kind of a shift in the pattern of agriculture as it relates to water.
You work with a group of growers and farmers in the east of England. What have you changed about what they do to try and improve their water management?
We have about 150 farmers. They're organised by catchment. We look at the total volume of abstraction from groundwater and surface water in the catchment. We compare that to the targets that the agency has for flows and other things. And for those that do have issues, we're then able to work with them on options. So the new winter storage reservoirs, new licences.
We haven't really, either as normal consumers or as farmers, had to really think hard about water in this country for many, many, many years. Is that going to have to change?
It does have to change. The Environment Agency are dealing with a legacy abstraction system that was put in place in the 1960s. It's left many of our catchments over abstracted and over licensed, and they are going through a 10-year process of addressing that issue. At the end of it, abstraction and catchments will be sustainable. What that means is there'll be lots of people who currently have licences that will have licences that are either cut or removed entirely, and that's going to be a big deal for a lot of people.
Steve Moncaster there. And that's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Rebecca Rooney, and Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.